What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. We don't really need to do an autopsy to figure out what was the cause of death for the Patriots' 2025 season. Blunt force trauma in front of 150 million people. But they far, far exceeded their life expectancy, did they not? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast. As I mentioned, we know what happened in San Francisco. The question is why? And then what's next? We will delve into that with Phil Perry.
I think you can use it as a learning experience and an experience that you have a chance to remember for the rest of my career, the rest of my life, and it's a chance to battle back for something that didn't go your way or you wish would have gone different and give you fuel to remember that, and that's what you give me something to work for.
The biggest question coming out of the game was why the offensive line was so wholly overmatched. Was it injury? Was it ineptitude? Was it a bad matchup? Is it something the time and experience will fix? Or is this going to be a condition that has to be managed over the course of time? Will Campbell did not talk after the game Sunday. He explained why on Tuesday and also went into some detail about his performance.
I apologize about the other night not being available to talk. Just had a lot of emotions, obviously going after tough loss, long year. I just wanted to make sure that I had my head on properly before I said anything. I didn't want to say anything that I didn't need to say, and I know that can happen, especially with myself, whenever there's emotions involved. So just wanted the night to sleep on things. I was picked high and paid a lot, so people expect a certain thing, and I expect more of myself. So whenever I don't perform, I don't expect everyone to be like, it's okay, buddy. I mean, obviously it sucks, but it doesn't suck for anyone more than it sucks for me. It obviously wasn't 100%. I mean, I don't think, when you tear a ligament in your knee, it's not going to be how it was before. But I was healthy enough to go, and, I'm not going to say that it held me back, but, yeah. It wasn't the same as it was before, obviously. Yeah.
When you sign up to play left tackle, you sign up to play corner, you sign up to play quarterback, you sign up to be the head coach. You get judged, you get scrutinized. Will's 22 years old. He's our left tackle. He'll get better. He'll get stronger. There's moments where he played well, moments where he blocked a guy. There's plays he'd like to have back. We're not moving Will to guard or to center or to tight end or anywhere else.
All right, we'll bring in the backbone of this entire podcast right now. It's Phil Perry. Phil, you heard Mike Vrabel today say there will be no moves made. And I agree. I think there's a lot of panic conversation right now about a 22-year-old playing on a torn MCL needing to be replaced, to which I would say, with who? With what? And there is free agency and trades. But I would rather see it play out, because I don't think the Will Campbell that you saw on the field on Sunday or throughout the playoffs is the Will Campbell he's going to be.
I agree with you there. I would say this, though, because I won't speak for you, but I know I personally, during the Bill Belichick experience, appreciated the fact that everybody had to earn everything all the time. And if you're saying he is our left tackle, it means that you're willing to eschew that idea and that philosophy for the sense of security that this young player is going to feel moving into a really important job and a really important season where the expectations are going to be ratcheted up for everybody. So I think Mike Vrabel does a great job of understanding his players and their individual psyches and what works and doesn't work for them. And I think he understands, probably given how the season ended, that's probably a part of the equation, that you can't go to that press conference today with any sort of hint of doubt in your voice at the microphone. No ambiguity. There can be no ambiguity for Will Campbell's sake. Now, I think I agree with the decision ultimately. We see a lot of tackles in this league struggle early and get better. And I personally believe, just based on talking to people who know much more about the position than I do, that he can be much better than he was in the postseason with some, yes, for sure, strength tweaks, but also just some technical tweaks and some coaching. And I'm not saying he wasn't coached this year, but I think he has to develop some different habits that will help him moving forward. So I don't mind the idea of sticking with him at left tackle, but that also doesn't mean you're okay with the performance that you saw this postseason, that you would just roll with that in perpetuity?
I think that Mike is hardwired to be defiant, and he certainly would know the conversation that ensued. We all knew the conversation as the game was going on that would ensue about Will Campbell and his suitability for that position. So Mike peeing on his territory with that player, I don't think necessarily reflects the tone he's going to take in April when they come back with Will Campbell. I think that Will be reminded of how things looked and that it can't ever happen again. Because while he's not on notice in front of the media, you have to be realistic. If you're protecting the blind side of a quarterback and you were the 4th overall pick and you're charged with playing left tackle, you got to play at that level or they're going to try and replace you.
And what does Mike Vrabel always say? He has to do whatever he needs to do in order to protect the team. And in this case, protecting Drake Maye and protecting the team are one and the same.
They're in lockstep.
And so, to your point, he is going to have to earn it as things move forward. But I think philosophically, generally speaking, and probably they had this idea, Tom, when they drafted him, was, okay, this is going to be a long-term this kid needs to get, but we think he has what it takes to do the job well enough. And obviously he did it well enough for a long period of time this year. It was not, the postseason was not a reflection of how he played when he was healthy during the regular season.
The extenuating circumstance of his knee being dismissed so wholly throughout this last couple of days, really, or the last few weeks as well. A torn MCL, you can't really move laterally very well. I'm not going to get into the physics and the science and the biomechanics of it all, but if you have some limitations to begin with in terms of size and strength that you're going to be able to improve because you're not fully developed as a human, and then you have an injury on top of it, that's an issue, which is a larger conversation that we might get into later when we listen to some Mike Vrabel sound, and he was excellent today, as was Drake Maye, who we will listen to as well. They maybe needed to do more to try and protect themselves over there. I want to read you a couple tweets, too. Phil mentioned the number of people who are talking publicly about what Will can do to get better. We got a couple of tweets from tackles who played at different levels in the NFL, one still playing. But first, Willie Anderson, he played for the Bengals extensively, 3-time All-Pro. He said, the long arm, short arm debate online about this kid is interesting. All long arms do is allow you to be later with your hands. That's the advantage of us long arm guys, but it doesn't guarantee success. He goes on, but the key part is I've watched 4 games this year, and you can tell he's worried, so he's overcompensating. He has to learn this offseason to say, flip it. I can block this guy with perfect sets. The college BS of vertical setting 90% of the time will get you wore out in this league. He's also a floater, which I love that he said that because I couldn't have said that myself, not being a tackle, but he does. He doesn't. He floats to the spot and then anchors. Anyway, Jermaine Illuminor, former Patriot, now a Giant. He said, honestly, the whole arm length convo is so stupid. Is it nice to have long arms? Sure, but in order to succeed, you need to find your set. So he goes on to talk about sets. So what's your reaction to what they're saying? And knowing that he had a bad wheel, should Vidarian Lowe have come in the Super Bowl?
I think it's a fair question to wonder at the time as it's happening. Boy, he's having such a difficult time right now. Is it worth it just to go to the guy that is a backup? Vidarian Lowe is a backup caliber, and I think he's a good backup when he's healthy, left tackle. And so I think they could have made that move without ruining Will Campbell's prospects at left tackle for the foreseeable future. I think some people feel that way. Well, once you bench a guy, well, what are you going to go back to? Yeah, you got an entire offseason and training camp and everything else to deal with. Yes, you could have gone back, especially since he's still working his way back from injury. Now, it's his 4th game back from injury.
You don't got it today. Pitch.
I think that, given that it's the Super Bowl, he's going to have to overcome whatever psychological damage that maybe inflicts upon him. But they could have made that move if they thought it would help. Maybe they didn't think it would help. I do have one other tweet here from Teron Armstead, who's a very good tackle for a long time for the Saints and the Dolphins as well, recently retired. He says, Will Campbell's issues are fixable. He's trying to block the best players in the world without a solid foundation. His feet are constantly moving backwards before contact on 90% of these reps. And he has posted every pass-setting rep that he had against the Seahawks. He says, damn near impossible to anchor against power if your feet are not in the ground. So that gets to that floating point. I also think that the vertical setting point is an interesting one, which Willie Anderson brought up, because I've heard different people argue different things. That is something that's a little bit more popular in some of these air raidy systems in college. And so maybe that's muscle memory for him from LSU. I've also heard people say that if you're worried about stunts, if you're worried about defensive tackles looping around or attacking your inside hip,
You have to be light on your feet.
you might
No?
vertically set in order to better handle those stunts. If you are going out at a 45-degree angle instead of straight back on a 90-degree angle, if you're out at 45 degrees, you're opening up a larger window for a defensive tackle to work his way through your offensive line. If you're setting vertically, your edge is going to be closer to the edge of the guard. You're going to be better set up to handle those stunts. So he might be coached to take those vertical steps that a lot of people are criticizing him for today. So long story short, I think the combination of a year with an offseason with a little bit more weight training so that you can handle the power when it's coming your way and better technique and better fundamentals, I think he's going to be a better player in year 2. And then maybe you're off and running at one of the most important positions in football.
We'll see. And you can't rule out the opportunity to add perhaps a complementary tackle, meaning a guy who does the things that Will Campbell doesn't, because Vidarian Lowe has had good games. He's not a great tackle. He's a backup level tackle, but he's not big either. They need a somebody who's stronger. Meanwhile, I can't imagine the Patriots close their door on adding tackle depth. Somebody who's a complement to Campbell's movability as an individual right now, who can anchor a little bit, a veteran in free agency. It also will be worth asking Doug Marrone when we get an opportunity to, what are some of the things that you were teaching him that he wasn't able to do, which he probably wouldn't answer. Anyway, Drake Maye also spoke today. Really appreciate these guys stepping up there. I think that Maye and Campbell are somewhat reluctant at times to have to media, but he was good when he got there.
Yeah, I think we just lost. I think they made more plays than we did, and they were the better team on Sunday.
Worth listening, though, to Nick Wright from Fox. Here's what he had to say about Maye.
It's an all-time bad playoff run for an MVP candidate. We might all owe Sam Monson and those 2 Josh Allen voters a big thank you. If he had won MVP 3 days prior over Stafford, when we saw how Stafford looked against this Seattle defense, it would have felt some type of way. Does not mean he is not a great quarterback or will not be a great quarterback. It simply means this playoff run will go down in history as one of the worst playoff runs by an individual MVP candidate quarterback. Regular season, he's completing 72% of his passes. Playoffs, 58%. Passer rating drop of 31 points is the largest in 30 years. And yes, those guys, of course, to have a drop, it means you have to have a high number, but still, that is a massive drop, and the only quarterback on there that we look at as, perennial MVP candidate is Peyton Manning, who, by the way, was a guy who didn't play his best in the playoffs. Drake Maye, the first 2 months of the year, was on a legendary deep ball heater. The last November, December, January, 3.5 months of the year, that's bad. 34% is bad. 5 touchdowns, 4 picks is actually okay. 78 passer ratings, bad.
I don't think that Nick Wright is wholly wrong, and while Patriots fans are going to look at that and say, wow, that's immense shade being thrown, he was on the mark with a lot of it. I do think that Stafford looked good against the Seahawks, but that's a red herring. He played him 3 times. They're in his division. He understands that team. How did Stafford look against Atlanta? Not good. 17th week of the regular season, he's thrown 3 picks. Drake Maye and the Patriots beat them. The regular season is moot. It's all revisionist BS, but it was an ass performance, Phil, regardless. What was your take on Maye's tenor today?
I thought if you're a Patriots fan watching that, you probably come away feeling really good about the guy that you have at that position, as bad as the performance was, because it felt like he was introspective. It felt like he was determined. He was obviously subdued. I think you're still dealing with the hangover from losing the biggest game of your life. But to hear him say he's going to do everything within his power, like he said everything that you would want to hear a young quarterback say after dealing with a really difficult loss. So for me, you've got the right guy. You've got a guy who is made up of the right stuff, and who knows if they'll ever get back there. But I don't think if they don't, it won't be for a lack of trying on the quarterback's part.
Maybe it's me being a little defiant on my own or contrary, but I just don't think that Drake May's shoulder was a huge freaking problem. It was down the list of issues, if it really even emerged. Yes, he took a shot. Yes, it was injured in the AFC Championship game. I've seen guys, probably almost every quarterback in the league by the end of the year is playing with some kind of an AC soreness from landing on it. And that's generally what happens when you land like that.
I think
it was a bigger deal.
No, I really don't. I'm with you. I think some people look at the inaccurate throws that Drake Maye made over the course of this postseason and say, see, something was up with this guy. And I guess I leave open the possibility that it was a factor, but for me, it's down the list too. The quarterback that I watched through the postseason looked like a quarterback who had been bothered, and it was a compounding issue, and that issue was pressure. Pressure every single game, sacks every game, taking hits every game. Your feet are going to be screwed up. Your eyes are going to be screwed up. I think your confidence in your protection and maybe even in yourself in some ways is going to be screwed up. And I think that led to the kinds of outings that we saw, especially in the last two games, for Drake Maye. So he needed to be better in certain instances, but I think when you're as consistently bothered as he was, you're going to turn into a player that you're really not in other circumstances.
Agreed. 21 sacks, 4 fumbles, 4 picks. He was able to summon the magic in some games. Those throws against Houston, tight window throws, excellent throws. But in this one, he could not hit the fairway. All right, coming back, we'll listen to Mike Vrabel and what he had to say in his season-ending press conference.
Talked about a disappointing finish to a phenomenal, exciting, enjoyable year. It's unfortunate. Talked to him about the, foundation I think that we've built. Much like a home. You build a home and then run out of things to do, and so you continue to add on to it. You finish the basement, you make additions to it, and we'll try to do that to this football team. And I like the foundation of it, and we'll try to improve on it.
Phil, I think there's an undercurrent from the head coach of, do you understand what we just did this season? We didn't expect to be here. You didn't expect to be here. Thank God we got here. We're going to learn so much from it. But my God, we're still not what we would call a finished product.
Yeah, it's funny. We've been in a lot of these after the season crash landing kinds of press conferences before. I don't think we've ever heard a head coach use the word phenomenal. Unless
point.
You're winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And it's one of the first words out of his mouth. And so I think that's the perspective he tried to convey to his team. I think it's the perspective he's trying to convey to his fan base. And I think the fans would, for the most part, agree. How many fans out there were predicting that they would get to the Super Bowl? They couldn't have been many. So he gave them a season, and his team gave them a season that they never could have anticipated, that exceeded everyone's expectations. And so I think that is the right perspective to have. Now, I think the difficult part for him, Tom, will be acknowledging all those relationships that he was able to build over the year with his players. And part of the reason that they were able to be as effective and have this strong culture that they had was because of those relationships. And now he's got to go into an offseason, and he has to, of his own volition, end some of those relationships. And I just wonder how he'll handle that.
Let's listen to Mike Vrabel speaking about precisely that on a question I posed to him about, you created such an incredible culture. It's going to be hard to say goodbye to guys who were part of that. Say, for instance, a pending free agent like Caleb Von Chaselin. Can you upgrade from him? Do you want him around for a long time? You could go either way. Great locker room guy, was productive for you. That's just a for instance. There are decisions to be made all over the place. Here's Mike's thoughts.
I don't know if that's difficult today. There'll be some difficult decisions that we'll have to make, and we'll try to do them with the team's best interest in mind. And as always, that'll never change. Appreciate what they did and how they came together, and all the guys that came in from other places that maybe didn't start the year with us, and the different path and the different journey that each guy took.
he also said too, Phil, and I thought it was a great answer near the end of the press conference, you either got to get better or you're going to be replaced.
Yeah, they're looking to replace better, younger, cheaper players all the time. That's just the nature of the business in the NFL. He said he learned that a long time ago.
And as a veteran, you got to stop it.
That's right. That's right. You have to make those decisions really hard on the Patriots, or make them easy in your favor. And maybe I should edit something that I said earlier of his own volition. He's going to have to end some of these relationships. He probably, in his mind, would say the relationships don't end. There are a lot of players in the NFL. It sounds like opponents that they've had over the years or over the year this year that he have played for Mike Vrabel in the past that still have a relationship with him. So, maybe it's not as dramatic as I'm making it out to be. It is just the nature of the business. Obviously, the team's going to be different next year as compared to this year, but that is it's an interesting balance that he has to strike. He's almost like it's almost like a father figure type of relationship that he seemed to have with a lot of these guys over the course of this year as their coach. And now you have to say to some of them by this offseason, goodbye.
Yeah, it's funny when you adopt the approach that Mike has, in which I'm talking about being a great husband, a great father, a great community member. You're establishing links that go beyond employment. Like Kevin Miller, probably rooting for us to be a good husband and dad, but he's not checking up on us. So, well, maybe he is, I don't know. But it is interesting when you coach in that way and to develop those relationships. It's not like they're not going to change anybody. If they can fix it, they can fix it. But it is interesting how many guys might get grandfathered into 2026 because of contributions made that actually may have been above and beyond. That'll be interesting to watch. How many of those hard decisions. I'll tell you what, the Patriots made a ton of hard decisions in 2025 in moving on from guys who were as close to stalwart Patriots as they could be. The Joe Cardonas, the David Andrews, Jonathan Jones, etc. So, go.
No, those are interesting decisions because, Vrabel didn't really have that pre-existing relationship with those guys. And so maybe, they were tough, I think, for the region to part with those guys as players. And there's a guy who sits in this chair, and David Andrews, that to me felt like, boy, that the most maybe shocking of all, because if you're trying to establish a good culture, he felt like a really good culture fit to me, and he didn't want to go anywhere. But I wonder now, to your point, does the phenomenal quote-unquote season that they had not blind them, but does it in some ways make the right decision a little harder, right? You got to this point with these players. Doesn't mean all of them are going to be great fits for next year based on age, injury, scheme, who's available to you in free agency or the draft. But do you look back at 2025 and say, but geez, look how well he played that year, and look how far we got, and so we got to stick with him, right? And I think there might be it's probably a difficult bond to break, and it probably makes those decisions even a little foggier for you.
Yeah, I mean, take a guy like Morgan Moses. You plucked him from the Jets, you put him at right tackle. He played virtually every game, if not every game. But he's 34 years old. And he is, certainly a lion and a leader. But you can get better at that spot. You can get younger. You can get cheaper. And if Morgan Moses has to be told we got to move on, somebody told Mike that one time too. So I think that Mike lives in the real world as a football coach when he looks at all his positions. Appreciate you. I mean, it's going to happen to you, Phil. They're going to say you're too old. All right.
Someday.
I did ask Mike Vrabel about the game because I wasn't even sure if he would have watched it because they're not breaking anything down yet. But he did say he had watched it. And I basically asked him, what were his regrets?
Well, I mean, I think that's the same case in every game. I wish we would have blocked this guy. I wish they wouldn't have moved. I wish we would have called a different coverage for what they did. I wish. But, it doesn't go that way. None of us did enough to put ourselves in a position to win a game. Early on, I think, however that went, and we had chances. We put a drive together and stalled. We hit a 20-yard play and then stalled. We gained 8 yards on first down and find a way to not convert a first down. And there's a lot of things where, we had chances on a quarterback, and if we make those sacks, maybe the ball comes out. Maybe we intercept the ball instead of them catching it. Maybe Marcus makes that interception, as close as that is. That's how this game goes.
I guess that's my biggest takeaway. If the Patriots and Seahawks played 10 times, the Patriots might win 2 or 3. I don't think they're going to get blown out regularly, but there's going to be some 10 to 12-point losses in there, and the wins that they get will be narrow ones. But in the end, they didn't show up. The Patriots of 2025, the best version of themselves, didn't show up. So it's not ruining the loss and that you didn't win. It's ruining the fact that you don't even get to know how you would have done if you came out with a healthy left tackle who was on his game and a quarterback who hadn't already been pummeled, and maybe an offensive game plan that switched more quickly.
Or a run defense that showed up in a way that it had really, for a great chunk of the season, and it did not. Or if Marcus Jones just gets an extra half step on that first ball that he jumped really early in that game and takes it back for a touchdown. There are a lot of really close what if types of moments, but when you string them all together, it ends up with a blowout because, again, you weren't at your best for dozens of snaps.
No.
It felt like there was almost every single offensive snap, at least, there was some kind of mistake somewhere.
You can't say they were unlucky.
Right.
And our friend Brian Hoyer said, as we're watching the game Sunday, he goes, it's the turnovers. And I was like, I don't think it's the turnovers. Turnovers inside the red zone, when you're marching downfield, those feel like a little more debilitating. These were just turnovers that were going to happen. I mean, desperation, throw down the middle of the field because you can't get anything going. It's not like I felt like that drive was going to end in points, nor when the strip sack came.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like, oh boy, they're about to bust out. Damn. The turnovers were another nail in the coffin, another needle in the haystack. No, another straw on the camel's back.
Right.
Mixing the metaphors once again. But yeah, we probably should put a cork in this, Phil.
That's fine with me.
We're going to get into the off-season conversation on Thursday. Guys, we appreciate you very much. This will be the last TV program. Last time you'll see us on... But you can find us on the YouTube, for God's sake.